This is episode number 17 of DevOpsParadox with Darin Pope and Viktor Farcic. I am Darin.
And I am Viktor.
We are here again, taking another listener question. And yet again, I am going to probably butcher someone else's name. So please forgive me in advance. This question's from either Ivor or Ivor, right? I'm the bad guy. That way you don't ever have to think badly about Viktor. You can always say, the stupid American doesn't know how to say my name. Yes, that's probably true. It's okay. So I ask for forgiveness now, and I'll ask for forgiveness later probably. But anyway, this question came in from Ivor a couple weeks ago. Couple days. I've lost track now. We've got a link to it down in the show notes. How do you like to learn? People that like to learn have their own style. What is yours?
Mine.
Let's start with Viktor. Yeah.
It depends from time to time. So in the past, I've read a lot of books. I was prick about books, so I was reading everything I could get my hands on. But I must say that last years, I don't remember reading books, maybe one or two only. I think it's probably because now I'm interested so much in cutting edge tech that, by the time I want to explore something, there are no books. And usually there is no documentation either. So I think that my learning is either by experimenting, doing random stuff and seeing the results, or reading the code. And not by choice, but simply because I don't have other option lately.
It's that latter that's interesting. Being able to read code.
Yeah. It all depends, what level of details you want to know about something. If you really, really want to know details, then code is the only viable option, I believe, in general, for almost anything. Documentation is never going to be up to date and detailed and things like that. But now, the thing is that level of detail is not probably necessary for most people, for most use cases. You don't really want to know everything happening with a single command. You just want to know, this is what it does. These are the arguments. Finished.
Right. With since you're also an author.
Isn't it contradictory that I write books but don't read them lately?
No, I don't believe so. Because when you, especially in the tech book world, when you've got a book, you know that it's already, being an author, it's 12 months out of date.
Yeah.
In anything that's a trade press book, anything that's actually that you have that's print is going to be that long. You might have some close stuff, but realistically, what's the lead time for trade press is 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's gone through editing for another 3 months in front of that. So it's baby time before it's even shipped.
Yeah. It's realistically 1 year since the moment you start working on a book until it is published, or more, not less.
Right. Once you give it to the editor saying, hey, I'm finished, unless you've got a really special publisher,
then
editor and publisher, it's you're 6 months.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Right, because the publisher is going to want to market. Now, this is going way off the rails, but the publisher is going to want to market. Well, actually, they don't want to market the book. They want you to market the book for them.
Yes.
I'll shut up. But there's that built-in lead time. So it's, all right, so let me see if I can bring it back to where I was trying to go to first, before I started ranting on the publishing industry. Reading the source code, sometimes it is the only true source of truth.
Yes.
Because the documentation, unless it was written in Go and they're following the really good Go way of doing things, it's way out of date. But even that's 50-50.
Yeah, if you would really want to document it in such great detail, as detailed as the code is, that would be just too much effort. That would mean that you're actually spending more time writing documentation than code, which I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but 98% of the people will never do that.
No.
and it will still become outdated a while after. Now, what is true is that there are stable projects as well. And then documentation tends to be better. And, like Kubernetes. Everybody's freaking out how fast it is moving. But actually, last 2 years, Kubernetes is not changing almost at all. What is changing is the whole ecosystem around Kubernetes. But Kubernetes core, more or less, if you read the documentation today, it's more or less the same as it was.
You got pod,
a year ago.
CRDs. You've got the basics are in place and not moving much.
Yes, I'm not saying that nothing changes. It definitely does, but it's not such high rate and such drastic changes as it was 2 years ago. Everything else is changing. That's true.
So you tend to, because of what you're learning today, it has changed how you learn.
Yes. It all really depends on, as I said before, it depends on what you're trying to learn. Like, if you try to learn Java, even with, doesn't matter really whether you jump into the latest version, whatever it is, or not, because 99% of Java is the same, and then every new version adds something. But still, if you're just starting to learn, latest and greatest in such an old project does not really make a difference. A big of a difference. I'm not saying that there are no new features. There are.
There's
basics are the same. You're going to write getter setters no matter the version of Java.
No, unless you're using Lombok and you can just let it magically show up.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point. So if let's say you're either college grad or somebody that basically gave the middle finger to college and just decided to enter the workforce, and you get into a small shop that's a Java shop, more than likely, if it's I'll call it a legacy shop, they're probably still Java 8. They might, especially if it's an older shop, they might have been using Lambdas, streams, the coolness of 8. But realistically, they're still stuck because it's an older project from Java 6, Java 5 code standards. Because why refactor? So that's potentially a hard way to learn, because you're coming in thinking, okay, great, I've been reading all this greatest stuff about Java 11. I've got all these other cool things in place, and now you drop into a Java 6 shop.
But even if you jump to the shop that does latest Java, just to keep your example, if you're just starting with programming, then again, does not really matter, because basics, the fundamentals are the same. What changes are the details that are more important when you become proficient with it than if you just start. Let's say you know nothing about Java. Fundamentals are the same. So, and then books are really good.
Right.
Good starting point.
Yeah, it gets this is actually where college texts or books that have turned into college texts make a lot of sense. Algorithms, patterns, those kinds of things are very useful. I mean, taking a look at we've talked about Martin Fowler's books before. I mean, we go back to one of the great books, which would be Gang of Four book.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book. However, don't try to use all the patterns in one program. Pick one or two and follow the right patterns and move on. But if you can understand the Gang of Four, we'll include a link if you've never even heard of the Gang of Four book. The concepts are sound. Some of them, I think, now have been updated.
If you read that book and then you try to apply in the real world every single pattern, then that means that you misunderstood the book.
Exactly. Yes, that's it. Just I've seen people. It's like, oh yeah, we've done all but one of the patterns. I went, why? Why did you do that? Well, it was in the book. I went, that's not what the book said. Or another class, like if you're going after Java, maybe you're looking at one of the older Bruce Eckel books or something like that. Again, I'm older than you, so books is all that I had. There was no internet when I was going through school. Well, there was, but we didn't actually have access to it. Your way of learning is similar to mine. I tend to be more, the way I learn best is by teaching. And I believe that sort of falls into you as well. You angle it just a little bit different probably than I do. I tend to get just enough, try to teach it, whether it's to somebody else, or I'm just sitting down and doing a screen capture recording of what I just learned and trying to make sure, okay, am I getting it right? That's the way it tends to sink in quicker for me, because even though you're looking at source code, you're still based on reading. I'm more tactile and visual.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately falls out true on the other side. I would much rather produce video and talk than sit down and put a word on a piece of paper. That's the most miserable thing to me in the world. Which is why I don't write books and why I don't really blog, but I can sit here and talk and ramble like an old man for a while, because that's how I think and that's how I best process things.
But what you said before, I think, is the key. If you can teach somebody, and I'm using teaching as a very, very general, high-level term. If you can teach somebody, then you learned well, in a way. Because, that means that people are going to start asking you questions. People are going to start saying something that sounds stupid at the very beginning. But then that starts kind of rolling in your head, and then you need to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Kind of, at least not to embarrass yourself.
The one thing I've learned about teaching is I definitely do not have to know everything. I just have to know one more thing than you.
Yeah.
And then once I teach that, I have to be really fast to be. That's the thing about consulting a lot. And any of my clients that are listening, I'm revealing the secret now. It's like, okay, I'm really prepared for today. I've got a couple of things in the back pocket, but once I get back to the hotel at night, I'm scrambling for the next day. I have a general plan for the whole week, but based on what has happened in that certain day, could change the path. It's like, following a text adventure path. That's what my life is. Is like, I'll walk up to a door. Do I kick the door or knock the door? Right? And where do I go from there? And that's how I progress, and that's how I learn.
Same thing. But that sparks now a new subject potentially. I hear quite a few times people complaining, when you go and teach something, let's say consulting, it's too expensive. You charge this for 8 hours. And they forget completely what you just said, kind of. And then there is 5 more hours after I finished for the next day preparation. And then there were 5 hours before that preparation and 7 months before that trying to figure out things that I'm going to tell you. So it's actually extremely cheap when you look at it that way, whatever the price is.
Exactly, because you, as the student, air quote student, you're not having to pay yourself to figure out. Because if this is the classic thing, when I go in and teach somebody X, I've got a plan. I can get them from A to Z and help build that foundation reasonably quick in a very logical order. If they were to try to do that on their own, the chance of success is probably small. I'm not going to say infinitesimal, but it's going to be very small. Because I can say, being at a number of clients, doing a lot of the same things over and over again, when I follow the pattern and when they do what I say to do, it's like, oh, we wouldn't have figured this out. This would have taken us months to figure out. And then I think, okay, what is your time worth? What is your team's time worth? If it cost $1,000, $2,000 a day for me, and I was there for 3 days, so you're all in 6,000, maybe some travel. So let's call it you're 8,000 in, but you got 6 of your people trained up in the right way to do things. Where's the value in that? People don't see the value in the learning. They believe the value is in the money. The value is in the knowledge.
Yeah, value is in the money. Just people don't misunderstand how you earn money, really.
Yeah, they think it's, and in some cases, people don't have the money to spend, but they've got all the time in the world. So that is the currency that they have right now is time.
Exactly. I mean, what you just said is not necessarily true. You can just easily be charging, I don't know, 2,000 per day, and that can easily be somebody's monthly salary in some other place.
Exactly.
In the world.
Yeah. And so to them, there is no way they could do that, but they've got time.
Yeah. So you can say, okay, what you're telling me is brilliant. It would take me a week to figure it out, but actually, for that price, I can continue figuring it out for
a week. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not always, but sometimes when you have to learn and classroom training, I do some regular classroom training. I enjoy that. But I much rather work with small groups of people, get the hands on, go through the things. So when I leave, it's like, oh yeah, we just converted all these things over. We have a path forward. It's going to take us another 2 or 3 weeks. There's no way we could have gotten this done by ourselves in 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, the problem with learning in a classroom type of setting is that you're learning something very, very generic.
Yeah. And you have to teach it generic.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
So you're learning generic stuff and somebody is explaining generic stuff, which does not, and then you're in a situation that maybe 90% of that applies to you, maybe 10. Because it really depends on what you're doing. So I really prefer sitting with a single team, single company for a day or a week than giving classroom training. I'm not saying that there is no value. There is value in that, in classroom training, definitely. But not as much as...
Well, I think that goes back to, it's a style of learning. For some people, they learn great in a lecture hall type scenario. I am not one of them. I'm bored in lecture halls. I like teaching it. I don't know what that means, that I'm also saying that I'm boring when I teach. I try not to be. I should bring candy and start throwing candy at people. That could be bad too. That could be a lawsuit waiting to happen. So let's think about the different ways we talked about. We've talked about reading. I've talked about, and to me, the other thing too is watching videos. I'll watch somebody do a 2-minute video. It's like, okay, I got that. Let me go do it myself first and make sure I got it. Lecture halls. What's another way? That's
offline, online lectures, videos, books, reading code. I mean,
how about conferences? Right? I mean, I'll mention one by name because I don't think they do them over in Europe, but No Fluff, Just Stuff.
Yep.
Has a tour over in the U.S. every year. So they go most of the same cities for I don't know how many years now.
5, I think.
I think a lot longer than that.
Oh, okay.
I've got a bag that's back to the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I think. So their model is basically 1-hour sessions. You got 4 to 5 1-hour sessions in a day. You got sort of an opening keynote and a closing keynote. Sometimes they're techish, sometimes they're not. I tended to like that because that's sort of like going to the market and just doing a little bit of shopping. It's like, okay, I'm willing to go sit for an hour and get somebody's opinionation on something. Because if it's useful for me, it's like, oh, okay, that gives me an idea. I can take that back, try it, see what I like.
Yeah, I mean, to me, going to an hour talk, if after the talk I have a single word or 2 words written or memorized that I need to try this out, that's good enough.
That was a win.
I honestly rarely get much more than that. I just kind of, to me, and this is very personal. I'm not saying that that's how everybody should or does feel, but I go to a talk, and if it's interesting enough, then I have a reference what to try next. I don't really learn in a talk. It's more about sparking my attention towards something.
Yeah, it's revealed knowledge to you at that point that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
Or you may have known it, but then they were the last ones to put that final block in. Exactly. That's like, oh, okay, now I see it. All right, now I know where to go.
But I'm one of those that people hate when I'm in the audience. Because I'm one of those people in a talk or a workshop or any type of eye-to-eye session, I'm one of those who opens the laptop from the very beginning, starts typing or doing something or working, and my brain is just listening in the background. And if I hear a keyword, if it's interesting, I'm going to stop working. Otherwise, I'm going to continue ignoring it, type of stuff.
So Victor, if you're ever giving a session and Victor walks in, don't take it personal. It's just the way, well, and that's another way to learn actually, is your background processing what's coming in. My wife is like that. Like for me, if I'm listening to an audiobook, I have to listen to the audiobook. If it's something that I'm wanting to learn or try to ingest, she can flip on an audiobook, have a TV going, be washing the dishes, and then, after 30 minutes can recite most of that audiobook. She's wired very differently than me in that respect. Me, I can't do that. I am a single-threaded man. I cannot multitask or multiprocess. Let's go that way.
I just think that in my case, I think that I'm doing always opposite of what I expect others to do. Kind of, I write books, but I expect people to read them. I don't read books myself. I go to conferences, give talks. I expect people to listen to me. I don't listen to others. I'm a horrible person. I just realized that right now.
Great. That'll be 5 cents, please. It's a Peanuts reference for anybody that didn't know that. In the therapy sessions right now. What else? What else can we talk about? We're getting close here. I think that's so. You learn typically by reading, in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Whether it's a book, code, or whatnot. I tend to. That's part of mine, but mine's more visual. Whether I'm going to be video or listening, and not so much reading unless I have to.
It really, I think that in my case, it's either reading or listening to somebody, both. But subjects are very different. I read about things I want to know right now. And I listen to other people's talks or videos or whatever on random subjects, hoping that it might spark my attention. And then I'm going to read about it. Mm-hmm. So when I go to a conference, I don't choose talks about Kubernetes, even though that's my area. Okay, I know the stuff, right? Kind of like I go to a random kind of front end. I don't do anything with front end for 5 years, and then every once in a while I go to a talk and see, this must be interesting. This might change my opinion about it, and I might switch to that now.
Right. So if somebody did if their title was, and this is where it gets down to. Most presenters aren't marketers, they're just presenters, which boils back down to you can tell who is, you can usually tell, and this doesn't necessarily apply to the no fluff guys because they've been doing this, so they've got a pattern. But going to just sort of like a general purpose conference, you can tell who the people that are, what vendor sessions are and what non-vendor sessions are based purely on title and how it reads. Because one's going to be really slick and one's going to be really blunt. The blunt ones aren't the marketing people or vendors, more than likely. But I think that's part of it too. Is if we're presenters, we got to be. I mean, you can look at some of the titles, even for our episodes. Some of them are good, some of them suck. Blame them all on me because I'm trying to be a little bit of a marketer here, right? We want people to listen, so I'm looking for clickbait anywhere I can get it. There, I said it. But a headline makes a difference. That headline is going to hook you in to either walk into the session or not. So coming back to what you're saying, you may not go to a basics of Kubernetes in 2019, right? You might go see the basics, if it was 2019, you saw somebody have a basics of Kubernetes in 2028. You might walk in for 3 minutes, but they at least got you in the door.
Not even that in my case, because
for you, yeah, because you know everything.
No, absolutely not. But I know most.
Yeah.
It's simply because I'm following it, so I know what's coming up, and I'm gonna read about it. But I more like want to be surprised with something that is completely unexpected.
So this would be the one to where, and of course, this probably is a bad example too. But Kubernetes on a 3,000 Raspberry Pi node system.
Yes, I never had the desire to try it myself, therefore going to a talk.
It would be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's those kinds of things. So if you're ever thinking about presenting at conferences, first off, get a really good title. That headline, that hook for the subject line for your talk is huge. Huge. Because otherwise, it's like a headline on a newspaper if anybody reads that anymore. Or a headline on any kind of blog post or article online. If it says Kubernetes 101, I'm not even getting near that link. But Kubernetes on a 3,000 Raspberry Pi node, heck yeah, I'm going to look into that. That just sounds interesting. Number one, why would anybody take that much time? And number two, what really happened?
Yeah, and I want to see, are you clinically insane?
Well, if you're trying, no. Anybody listening to us right now, I think, may be asking that same question right now.
But what I believe is important to understand, at least related to conferences. Real knowledge gathering is not happening in talks. It's happening in after parties and things like that. You find, I don't know, somebody you like, find out where he's going to a party after his talk, and then that's where you're going to have a real knowledge gathering.
This is something that I do is usually you'll see people after they've done their presentation, there's a line to talk to the people afterwards. I'm not in that line anymore. I used to be that person. Now I'm outside in the hall waiting for them to come out.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to stalk them until I find sort of where their patterns are. And then, like you said, where's the party that they're going to be at? I've made some great friends doing that. That sounds weird. But then you can catch them out of that, what I'll call signing the book line right after the session. Because they're just, if you've been talking for the past 45 minutes, the last thing you want to do is talk for another 45 minutes.
No. When I finish my talk, all I want to go is get out of there and sit somewhere where somebody's going to put gin tonic in my hand. That's what I want to do. Yeah,
you have to decompress. Right, that's your decompression. For me, I would sit down and give me a glass of water. I'm good. But just I got to decompress from there for me, I can be done in like 10 minutes. It's like, just give me 10 minutes. Let me fly, and then we can talk for a couple hours if you want. Just let me shift gears out of presentation mode back into human mode, and then I won't be potentially a jerk to you, because that can happen too. All right, so learning. I think another plus here, and then we'll wrap it here. Go to in-person live places. Go to conferences, go to meetups, go to whatever, because there are other humans out there. Don't live your life online. It's you got to meet people. We'll leave that there. That might be another topic to dig into at some other point, is how to properly go to a conference.
But the main difference between conferences and other types of material you're reading or watching is novelty. In a conference, people are going to speak about what they're doing right now.
Yes.
In a book, they're going to write about what they were doing last year.
Can we come up with something about and capture what they're doing in the future?
I mean, that's the part with gin tonic in a hand.
That's when the gin and tonic kicks in. Okay. There we go. All right. So that's the third. So that's past, present, and future. Yes.
Exactly.
All right. Cool. You know what? I haven't even checked recently. Has DevOpsParadox come out yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. At the time of this recording, anyway, it hasn't come out yet.
I've been receiving news that it's coming next week. So every time I speak with them, it's coming next week.
Okay.
Next week, it will be coming week after next.
We got it. Okay. There we go. And of course, we are recording this one a little bit early, but it's not super early from the time it will release. Also, the 2.6 Toolkit book, getting closer and closer every day.
Yeah, I like DevOpsParadox, which is out of my hand. 2.6 a month from now it's going to be finished fully.
So you're looking probably end of September at the latest. It should be, at least at this point, considered done, maybe.
Yes, because I was waiting for the feature that was released 2 weeks ago. Now I can write about it, and then it's finished.
Cool. And with that in mind, I can't remember my closing lines right now, so I have to look them up again. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, you'll have comments about this very trailing episode. And if you've listened to this point, thank you for listening this far, because we get data on how far people listen, and it's not always to this end. But if you are here, thank you. Here's a piece of candy. That's the best I can do right now. But if you have any questions or comments about this episode, you can reach out to us on the Slack workspace or Slack team DevOps 20. That's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 0. There's a link to it down in the show notes to where you can join up. It's completely free. Links to our Twitters and stuff. If you have any questions, please send us. You can send us a message on Twitter. We've got our emails. They're not there, but heck, I'll throw them up there if you want it. Do you want your email up there? Why not? Everybody has your email anyway, right?
Yeah, everybody has my email.
Yeah, so okay. So we'll put it up there. So you can email us or whatnot. But really, the Slack or Twitter are the two quickest ways to get to both of us. And let's see, what else? I think that's it. You got any final comments about learning?
No, just learn something every day.
And maybe don't even learn something technical every day. Just learn something.
Yeah, learn how to ride, to ride a car, or learn something. Doesn't matter what it is.
The subtext to that is be a lifelong learner. Don't ever stop learning.
Exactly. It's kind of, I really believe in that. I'm almost never saying that because it sounds cheesy, but it is actually probably the most important thing in our profession.
Absolutely, because if you think you've got it, you're over with. Done. Okay. I think that's a good place to stop it. Thanks for listening to episode number 17 of DevOps Paradox.